The air bites your cheeks, crisp as the first snap of a winter apple. You stand at the edge of Chang'an, capital of the Tang dynasty, where snowflakes drift like ash from a celestial fireplace. It's 740 AD, and the city sprawls before you, a labyrinth of crooked roofs and lantern-lit alleys, all buried under a quilt of white. Horse-drawn carts rattle past, their wheels crunching through slush like stale biscuits. You smell wood smoke and roasted chestnuts, mingled with the tang of wet wool from cloaks worn by passers-by. Above it all, the imperial palace looms, its vermilion walls peeking through the snowfall like shy, painted lips. You pull your thin robe tighter, linen regrettably unlined, and instantly regret not inventing thermal underwear 8 centuries early. A merchant hawks mooncakes of immortality nearby, though they look suspiciously like yesterday's buns reheated. Guaranteed to make you live forever, he croaks, or at least until next Tuesday. You shuffle past, boots sinking into the mud-snow slurry that doubles as pavement. Historians call this China's golden age, a time of poetry and prosperity. But right now, you're mostly aware that your toes feel like frozen dumplings. Ahead, a gaggle of scholars huddles beneath a silk awning, debating whether pine needles or plum blossoms make superior tea flavoring. One waves a dismissive hand. Plum is pedestrian, he sniffs. Pine is the philosopher's choice. You resist pointing out that both taste like steeped lawn clippings. Instead, you notice clay jars lining the eaves of nearby homes. Dozens of them, glazed in celadon green, their mouths open to catch falling snow. It's the emperor's latest decree. Citizens must gather fresh flakes for the imperial collection. Why? Because Emperor Xuanzong believes snow is the purest ink of heaven, destined for his poetry scrolls, or possibly his bathwater. Historians still debate whether this is profound cosmology or peak royal boredom. As you trudge toward the palace district, an official in duck-egg blue robes stops you. State your business, he demands, icicles dangling from his hat like dysfunctional wind chimes. You mumble something about sightseeing, which he accepts with a grunt. Tax revenue from tourists is surprisingly robust this season. He directs you down a lane where artisans sculpt ice lanterns, their hands raw as butchered meat. One craftsman whispers that the emperor pays extra for snow caught during a full moon, claiming it's more melodious. You pocket this tidbit. Tonight's snow might fund your next meal. A sudden gust knocks a jar off a rooftop. It shatters near your feet, scattering snow like confetti at a very sad party. The homeowner wails, "Do you know how long I balanced that on a bamboo pole?" You offer condolences, thinking of the 800,000 souls crammed into this city. Chang'an is the largest metropolis on Earth, a fact as impressive as it is exhausting. You're jostled by silk traders, rice vendors, and a monk carrying a caged cricket he insists is enlightened. As dusk bleeds into indigo, you spot the palace gates, towering, gold-tipped, guarded by men whose armor clinks like ill-tuned pianos. A eunuch scurries past, clutching a jar swaddled in leopard fur. "For His Majesty's private stash," he hisses, as if transporting diamonds. You sigh. Tomorrow, you'll join the snow-gathering shifts. For now, you crave a hearth. Any hearth. Let's be honest, you probably won't make it through this day without napping in a stable. But first, a gentle request. If this quiet journey soothes you, kindly like or subscribe. It helps our little channel grow. And where in the world are you resting tonight? Drop a comment. We love imagining you cozied up in Toronto or Tokyo, snow or no snow. Now let's ease into tonight's journey, where duty calls like a half-remembered dream. You wake to a boot prodding your ribs. Up! The Imperial Snow Audit starts at dawn, barks a sergeant whose mustache resembles two angry caterpillars wrestling. You're in a barracks smelling of wet hay and unwashed feet, one of 300 conscripts drafted for flake fidelity. Outside, Chang'an glitters under a weak sun, its frost-laced roofs gleaming like sugared pastries. You're handed a clay jar, wider than a rice bowl, heavier than expected, and herded toward the palace. The snow, they tell you, must be unblemished by crow or cough. Yesterday's slush has hardened into treacherous ice patches. You slip, arms pinwheeling like a drunk crane, while a passing noblewoman's sedan chair avoids you with a disdainful swerve. Her perfume, jasmine and crushed ginger, hangs in the air as her servants mutter about clumsy mortals. You briefly consider faking a snow-collecting injury, maybe a strained eyelid from squinting at falling flakes. Inside the palace grounds, the absurdity deepens. Eunuchs glide through corridors with jars balanced on padded trays, faces taut with concentration. One drops his load. Snow puffs across the marble like ghostly dust. He pales, whispering, "The dowager's tea snow. I'm doomed." Rumor says she sips only snowmelt from the 7th day of the 12th moon, allegedly the most harmonious. You're assigned to the Garden of Whispering Pines, where Emperor Xuanzong himself sometimes wanders, sighing at icicles. As you kneel to scoop powder fine snow, you notice the jars aren't just containers. Each bears a tiny character etched near the base. Yue for moon, Xing for star, Ji for solitude. Scholar officials hover nearby, recording wind direction and flake size in ledgers thicker than Buddha's earlobes. His Majesty seeks patterns, one confides. He believes snowflakes are celestial messages or frozen tears of the moon goddess. Frankly, the memos are unclear. A giggle echoes. Behind a frozen koi pond, consort Yang Guifei, the emperor's famed beauty, tosses snowballs at her maids. She's swaddled in sable, cheeks flushed like bruised peaches. "Catch the fluffy ones," she trills. The emperor says they're the happiest. You recall Chang'an's weirdest rumor. Yang's maids must catch snowflakes on rabbit fur mittens and present the prettiest for her hairpins. Today, though, she's more interested in pelting a eunuch's hat. Your fingers numb. You fill jar after jar. The work is numbingly peaceful. Swish, scoop, tamp, swish, scoop, tamp. It's the ASMR of the Tang Dynasty. Beside you, an old conscript mumbles about peasant uprisings in Hebei. "Taxes on snow jars now," he grumbles. "What's next? Air tariffs?" You smile, but the truth lurks beneath. Xuanzong's snow obsession cost more than his army. Historians still debate whether this fiscal frostbite helped trigger the Aleutian Rebellion. Spoiler, it did. A gong booms. Lunch is stale millet porridge, served with a side of imperial propaganda. An official reads aloud. "Snow purity reflects moral purity. Flake in the jar is a virtue in the heart." You glance at your jar, currently holding 3 pebbles and a beetle. Oops. By afternoon, you're stationed near the moon-viewing pavilion. Xuanzong arrives, draped in robes of eggshell white brocade, his gaze distant as a fogged mirror. He examines your snow, nods, and drifts away, trailing eunuchs who sweep his footprints like precious artifacts. He'll write poems tonight, whispers a guard, or cry about his dead swan. Hard to predict. As shadows stretch, you spot the jars from Section 1 streets, now sealed and labeled in palace storerooms, stacked like a terracotta army of chill. One jar, slightly cracked, oozes a tear of meltwater. You imagine centuries hence, archaeologists finding these icy time capsules, debating if they held snow or pickled plums. The sergeant dismisses you with a grunt, back at dawn, and no pocketing snow for personal use. You walk past the palace kitchens, where chefs boil snow for the emperor's tea. It's said he savors the taste of emptiness. You'd prefer honey. Snowflakes kiss your cheeks as you exit the gates. Chang'an's lanterns flicker on, turning streets into rivers of hazy gold. Somewhere, a flute plays a tune as thin and lovely as an ice thread. Your jar is empty now, but your mind holds the day's quiet poetry. The scrape of scoops, the hush of falling snow, the emperor's lonely figure hunting beauty in a transient world. You'll return tomorrow. For now, sleep beckons. A warm, dark jar of your own. The barracks' pre-dawn chill feels like inhaling shards of glass. You're roused not by a boot this time, but by the scent of scorched millet drifting from the communal hearth. A culinary crime against porridge. Outside, the world remains swaddled in darkness, stars still pinned to the sky like cold, distant sequins. Your jar awaits, its empty mouth yawning. Today's assignment, the Imperial Ice Gardens, where frozen streams coil like glass serpents beneath willow skeletons. A eunuch, with a voice like rustling silk, distributes bamboo scoops. Mind the black ice near the moon-viewing pavilion, he murmurs. 3 concubines slipped there last week. His Majesty declared their falls tragically lyrical and wrote a quatrain about it. You imagine the poem, "O fragile ankles," like winter's first brittle twig. Snap, then silence. Tang Dynasty humor, you suspect, was an acquired taste. The gardens unfold, a monochrome dreamscape. Frost feathers every branch, turning trees into coral reefs of ice. You kneel by a frozen rivulet, scooping snow so fine it vanishes on your tongue, like forgotten gossip. Nearby, imperial astronomers huddle around a bronze armillary sphere, dusted with snow, arguing over whether last night's aurora was a celestial omen or just atmospheric indigestion. One snaps, "It portends a bumper radish harvest." Another scoffs, "Radishes? It's clearly an omen for improved calligraphy." Historians still debate whether Tang Star readers were visionary or just very creative guessers. A rustle of silk announces Consort Yang. Today, she's a vision in plum blossom pink, trailed by maids clutching miniature brass braziers. "Don't pack the snow too tightly, darling," she coos at you, her breath a cloud of clove-scented warmth. His Majesty prefers it airy, like a well-risen steamed bun. One maid discreetly nudges a perfect 6-pointed flake onto a rabbit fur mitten. Tonight's hair ornament, no doubt. You recall Chang'an's strangest beauty secret. Noble women wash their faces in snowmelt, believing it prevented wrinkles. Results, you note, appear optimistic. As you work, a gaggle of poets wanders past, fur robes flapping like grounded crows. They pause, squinting at your jar. "Observe the laborer," one declaims. "His toil, a metaphor for life's ephemeral burdens." His companion sighs. Or, "He's just cold." They scribble on rice paper, fingers blue-tinged. You overhear a line. The jar fills, yet the soul remains empty, cut short by a snowball smacking his ear. Consort Yang giggles from behind a snowdrift. Imperial intrigue, it seems, includes frozen diplomacy. Mid-morning brings the snow registrar, a pinched man whose ledger records each jar's flake density and spiritual resonance. He peers into your container. Adequate loft. But the chi feels agitated. You resist asking how one measures snowflake chi. He slaps a label on your jar. Shuang shuang, frost. For the dowager's foot bath, he sniffs. She believes it prevents gout. You picture the empire's most powerful woman soaking her toes in your morning's work. History's absurdities, it seems, are foot deep. Lunch is a lukewarm dumpling, eaten under a pagoda where ice sculptures drip mournfully. An old gardener whispers a secret. The emperor stores sacred snow from Mount Lee in jade urns sealed with beeswax. Melts slower, he claims. More poetic viscosity. You file this under things you can't unhear. Nearby, a monk meditates atop a frozen lotus pond, impervious to the cold. He's seeking enlightenment through hypothermia. A guard mutters. You envy his stillness. As dusk bleeds into the gardens, like spilled ink, lanterns flicker on. You see Emperor Xuanzong on a covered walkway, staring at the moonrise. He holds a single snowflake on a silver tray, gazing at it as if it holds the secrets of the Silk Road. A eunuch whispers, "He's been there since noon." The snowflake, of course, melted hours ago. Sleep in the barracks is a fragile truce. 30 men snore in a symphony of guttural drones and whistling nostrils, a soundscape less restful slumber than dying water buffalo chorus. You pull your thin blanket over your ears, dreaming of silent, snowless deserts. Dawn arrives rudely, accompanied by the clang of the muster gong. Your bones creak like unoiled hinges. Outside, a fresh snowfall blankets Chang'an, erasing yesterday's footprints. The city reborn in sterile white. "Special duty," barks the mustachioed sergeant. "Palace storerooms. Inventory shift." Relief washes over you. No scooping today. Just counting endless jars in a dim, cavernous space, smelling of damp clay and existential boredom. You trail a clerk named Master Kuo, whose spectacles perch precariously on his nose. "Respect the taxonomy," he chirps. "Snow from north-facing roofs goes here. Pure yin energy. South-facing, too much sun chi. Common mistake. The storeroom is a cathedral of chill. Shelves stretch into shadow, stacked with thousands of jars labeled in meticulous script. Snow, hour of the hare, southwest corner, east palace roof, slight bird overflight, non-defecatory. Master Kuo sighs. "Last week, a consort demanded snow from her childhood village for a nostalgia bath. Took us 3 days to find it. Resulted in mild pneumonia. Worth it." He adjusts his spectacles. "Beauty," they say, "requires suffering. Mostly ours." You count jars in section 7B. Blizzard of the 9th day. First moon. Year of the wood rat. One jar feels lighter. Peering inside, you find not snow, but a tiny, perfectly folded paper crane, left by some bored clerk centuries ago. History's hidden graffiti. Master Kuo tsk tsks. Ah, clerk bow. Always the joker. Transferred to yak tax inventory in Gansu. Harsh, but fair. A commotion erupts near the Imperial Bedchamber Reserve shelves. A eunuch wails. The seal on urn 42 is broken. His Majesty's personal moon-viewing snow. Panic ripples through the clerks like wind through wheat. Master Kuo inspects the urn's wax seal. "Rodent nibbles," he declares dryly. not a celestial breach. Calm yourselves. Relief is palpable. You learn a vital Tang truth. In the palace, a mouse's tooth outweighs a peasant's life. Lunch is taken perched on crates of emergency thawing salt. Master Quo shares a bizarre fact. During heat waves, the emperor gifted courtiers jars of last winter's snow as a luxury. Melted into tea, of course. A symbolic chill. You picture sweating nobles, sipping tepid, year-old meltwater, pretending to shiver. Performance art, Tang style. Later, hauling jars to the aging cellar, you pass the palace scriptorium. Scribes hunch over scrolls, copying snow collection edicts by lamplight. One mutters, Article 17, subsection C. Flakes damaged by airborne dust, particulates shall be downgraded to footpath quality. Another groans, my brush hand is cramping, like a salted slug. You glimpse their ledgers, not just snow records, but tax rolls, grain reports, conscription lists. The empire's veins, pulsing with ink. Historians still debate whether Xuanzong's snow bureaucracy paralyzed the real administration, or was its depressingly logical extension. As you leave that evening, snow begins anew. Thick, earnest flakes. At the gates, a new conscript shivers, clutching his jar. Heard we get extra rice if we catch a hexagonal perfection, he whispers hopefully. You nod, too tired to explain the odds. Walking back, you pass a tavern where off-duty guards toast with hot plum wine. To snow, one slurs. May it fall forever, and may we never scoop it again. Laughter rings, warm and human against the frozen night. Your bunk beckons. The snores, the scratchy blanket, the smell of wet wool. It feels almost like home. Somewhere, an emperor admires a jar. Somewhere, a mouse nibbles sacred wax. You close your eyes. The day's cold, stored in your bones like cellar chill. Outside, the snow keeps writing its silent, endless poem on the sleeping city. The scent of roasting sesame oil and star anise pulls you towards the palace kitchens before dawn. Frost feathers the cobblestones underfoot, crunching like shattered sugar. Inside, steam billows in great, fragrant clouds, fogging the high beams where cured hams dangle like sleepy bats. You've been reassigned. No more stooping in gardens or counting dusty jars. Today, you witness the culmination of the imperial snow obsession, the kitchen of melting whispers. A harried master chef, sleeves rolled to his elbows, barks orders. Vat 3 needs more Dragon Peak snow. The consort's morning ablutions await. Under his gaze, apprentices pour jars of pristine snow into massive bronze cauldrons suspended over crackling pine fires. The snow surrenders with a soft, surrendering sigh. Each melt must be precise, mutters a sous chef, stirring vat labeled Consort Yang's hair rinse. Full moon harvest, hour of the rat. He adds 3 drops of plum blossom essence. Too much, and it smells like a perfumer's accident. Too little. He shudders. Unthinkable. You're handed a tasting spoon, a ridiculous sliver of jade. Check the harmony vat, instructs the chef. Supposedly from a temple rooftop in Luoyang. Tastes faintly of incense and pigeon regret. You sip. It's cold water. Just cold water. But around you, connoisseurs murmur gravely. Notes of distant temple bells. Declares a eunuch food taster, swirling his sample in a crystal cup. Undertones of meditative silence. Perhaps a hint of north wind? You nod solemnly, resisting the urge to say, it tastes like roof runoff. Historians still debate whether Tang palates were extraordinarily refined or victims of magnificent groupthink. A commotion erupts near the tea station. A junior chef has mistakenly used Gatehouse Eve, snowfall after midnight, instead of Imperial Privy Garden, first snowfall, for the Emperor's morning brew. The master chef pales. The texture, the Gatehouse snow has a coarser grain. His Majesty will detect the lack of horticultural serenity. The offending pot is swiftly dumped onto the flagstones. You watch a puddle spread towards a scullery maid's feet. She sighs, stepping over it like a minor inconvenience in a grand opera. Your task: sort snow by poetic potential. An elderly tea master, hands trembling like autumn leaves, instructs you. See this? He points to a jar of snowflakes caught mid-blizzard. Aggressive energy, suitable for invigorating broths for the guards. Another jar holds delicate, slow-falling flakes. This is contemplative, reserved for His Majesty's afternoon meditative tea. Never confuse them. He leans in conspiratorially. Once, a servant mixed blizzard and zen flurry for the dowager's foot soak. She claimed it made her feel aggressively serene. Had the poor lad transferred to counting yak hairs in Qinghai. Near noon, a procession arrives. Consort Yang herself, seeking snow-infused pastries. Make them light, she instructs, like the snow on a lover's sigh. The pastry chefs scramble, folding snow melt into rice flour dough with the reverence of alchemists. You witness the birth of Phoenix snow cakes, steamed buns so ethereal they threaten to float off the tray. Yang takes a delicate bite. Tastes like wistfulness? Her maids nod fervently. You remember a street vendor selling similar buns yesterday for 2 copper coins. They tasted like dough. As heat and steam lull you, you notice a small, cracked jar set apart, the one you saw shatter weeks ago. An apprentice is cautiously pouring its slightly dirty meltwater into a bucket labeled floor scrubbing, minor hauls only. Even failed snow finds its humble purpose in the Empire's vast machinery. Winter deepens its grip. The air in Chang'an feels brittle, snapping like frozen silk if you breathe too sharply. Your new assignment takes you outside the vermilion walls, into the city's bustling, snow-choked heart, the frozen market. Here, the imperial snow decree collides gloriously with Tang Dynasty capitalism. You shuffle past stalls piled high with snow bricks, meticulously carved and stacked like sugary ingots. Pure Westgate blizzard, cries a vendor, slapping a block. Guaranteed no crow shadows, perfect for ice cellars. Next to him, an old woman sells lucky snowballs, compacted orbs infused with dried chrysanthemum petals. Roll them in your doorway, she croaks, ward off malevolent Xi. And tax collectors. You suspect the latter is the real draw. The market thrums with a peculiar energy. Merchants hawk specialized snow. Scholars solitude snow, gathered in remote courtyards. Bridal purity snow. Virgin snowfall untouched by human feet, collected by tongs. Even comedic snow, reportedly from rooftops near the court jester's quarters, guaranteed to induce lightheartedness when melted for tea. You pause by a stall offering distressed vintage snow. Last season's melt, slightly yellowish, sold at a discount for desperate poets. Adds world-weary depth to verses. The vendor winks. Your task is procurement for the palace baths. An imperial steward, wrapped in fox fur, haggles over a cartload of moonlit lake ice. This has air pockets, he accuses, chipping a block with a tiny silver pick. His Majesty's bathwater must be visually coherent. No bubbles. The ice merchant shrugs. Bubbles add sparkle, like tiny frozen stars. The steward looks ill. Negotiations stall. You learn the Empire's most obscure job exists: ice quality tribunal mediator. Nearby, a crowd gathers around a spectacle. A traveling snow scholar demonstrating snowflake catching on treated silk screens. Observe the diversity, he booms, holding up a screen dotted with intricate crystalline stars. Each flake, a unique testament to heaven's artistry. Or frozen water vapor. Depends on your philosophical leanings. He sells pamphlets, decoding the celestial scroll, a guide to snowflake symbology. A group of students debates whether a particularly jagged flake signifies impending bureaucracy or just bad weather. Historians still debate whether Tang snowflake classification constituted proto-science or elaborate performance art. You're jostled by a man carrying a cage of shivering crickets. Snow song crickets, he announces, kept in snow chambers. Their chirps are crisper, ideal for melancholic evenings. You recall the monk's enlightened cricket weeks ago. Perhaps this was its less fortunate cousin. As you secure the bubble-free ice for the steward, you pass a stall auctioning frozen poetry. A scroll, sealed inside a block of clear ice, hangs suspended. Master Levi's ode to a drifting cloud. The auctioneer cries, cryogenically preserved. Thaw it for inspiration, or just admire the ice. Bidding is fierce among wealthy merchants. The poem inside, you suspect, is probably about wine. The sun dips low, casting long blue shadows. You head back towards the palace, the steward grumbling about bubble-related expenses. The market's din fades, replaced by the soft shush-shush of your boots in fresh powder. Lanterns begin to glow in windows, each a small, warm defiance against the encroaching cold. You think of the snow, now commodity and currency, prayer and punchline, collected in jars, melted in vats, sold in markets. Emperor Xuanzong sought heaven's ink, but Chang'an turned it into life. Exhausted, strangely content, you carry the chill market air back towards the palace gates, where tomorrow, the snow's journey, and yours, will begin anew. A low, persistent cough rattles through the barracks, like dice in a cup. Yours. The palace physician, summoned at dawn, peers at your tongue, with the intensity of a man deciphering battlefield maps. His diagnosis is swift and baffling. Wind-cold invasion with excessive snow proximity. Translation: you've shoveled too much, heaven. The prescription: 3 days rest, steam inhalation with ginger and dragon well snowmelt. Avoid further crystalline exposure. He scribbles a note exempting you from snow duty. You clutch it like a pardon from the executioner. Yet rest in Chang'an is relative. Drawn by the weak sun, filtering through oiled paper windows, you wander the palace's lesser-used corridors, arteries humming with quieter life. You find yourself in the scriptorium annex, a room smelling of inkstone dust and quiet desperation. Here, junior scribes copy snow collection reports onto mulberry paper scrolls destined for dusty archives. Their brushes whisper, scratch, 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 a sound like mice nibbling on history. One scribe, barely older than a boy, struggles with a complex character. Xian, Xian, Grauple, or Soft Hail. Useless, he mutters, blotting the paper. Who cares if it was Snow or Grauple on the consort's balcony on the 17th? An older scribe glances up, eyes weary. The dowager's astrologer cares, claims Grauple portends minor intestinal discomfort in the royal dogs. Accuracy is paramount. He gestures to towering shelves, groaning under scrolls titled Comparative Flake Density, East Wing versus West Wing Rooftops, 741-742 AD. Historians still debate whether this meticulous record-keeping preserved invaluable climate data or merely documented imperial whimsy on an epic scale. A soft chime sounds. Tea break. You're handed a warm cup. Not snowmelt, mercifully, just ordinary boiled water with a single chrysanthemum bud floating like a tiny, sunken sun. The scribes huddle near a brazier, warming ink-stiffened fingers. They speak in hushed tones about the Great Snow Tax Assessment. Apparently, households exceeding their mandatory jar quota receive a tiny silk merit badge. Falling short incurs a fine payable in extra jars of snow next season. My uncle, whispers one scribe, buried jars in his cabbage patch last summer just to have a vintage reserves. Got fined for improper storage technique. Bureaucracy, it seems, always finds a way. Later, seeking warmer air, you drift near the palace armory. Inside, soldiers polish swords and lacquer leather armor, the air thick with the scent of linseed oil and male sweat. They glance at your scribe exemption note with amused pity. Soft hands, chuckles a grizzled sergeant, testing an arrowhead's edge. Try hauling siege engines through mountain snowdrifts, then talk of wind-cold invasion. He tells of campaigning near the frozen Amur River, where spit cracked before it hit the ground. Real cold steals your breath, makes your teeth ache, like they're full of ghosts. This, he gestures towards the snowy courtyard, Emperor's hobby cold, yet even he respects the snow jars stacked near the armory door, destined for cooling forge water to temper blades. Imperial snow touches everything. As dusk settles, painting the corridors indigo, you hear music, a single pipa plucking a melody as delicate and melancholic as a falling snowflake. Following the sound, you find a minor consort practicing in a moonlit courtyard, her breath visible in the cold air. She plays for an audience of one, a single, perfect snowflake, balanced precariously on the neck of her instrument. It trembles with each note, refusing to melt, a private rebellion against impermanence, witnessed only by you and the silent moon. You retreat before she notices, the fragile beauty feeling like something too precious to disturb. Your rest ends. The cough lingers, a ghost in your chest, but the physician deems you fit for light indoor duty. You're assigned to the Hall of Whispering Steam, the Emperor's private bathhouse. It's a realm of warmth and damp marble, a startling contrast to the frozen world outside. The air hangs thick with the scent of cedarwood, clove, and something indefinably clean, like sunlight on stone after rain. Eunuchs glide silently on felt-slippered feet, carrying armfuls of fluffy linen towels and jars whose contents you instantly recognize. Snow. Not just any snow. These jars bear labels like Sacred Summit, Hour of the Tiger, No Wind, and Consort, Yang's Preferred. Fluffy cumulus type. A bathmaster, robed in spotless hemp, directs operations with serene authority. The Emperor immerses first, he murmurs. Water temperature must match the precise warmth of a mother pheasant's breast. Test it. He hands you a ridiculously ornate silver thermometer, shaped like a sleeping dragon. You dip it into the vast marble bath. Steam curls around your wrist. The bath is filled not with plain water, but with snowmelt strained through layers of silk and infused with crushed jade powder for energetic clarity and a few drops of sandalwood oil. It feels silky and absurdly extravagant. You recall hauling ice blocks in the market. A single bath here likely consumes a street vendor's monthly stock. Emperor Xuanzong enters, wrapped in a simple robe. He looks older here, stripped of brocade and ceremony. The lines on his face deepened by the steam. He nods, a silent command. Attendants remove his robe. He steps into the milky water with a soft sigh that seems to release the weight of the empire. He sinks until only his head is visible, eyes closed, snowmelt lapping at his jawline. For a long moment, the only sound is the soft drip of condensation from the cedar ceiling and the distant plink of a water clock. Your task is snow replenishment. As the bath cools imperceptibly, the bathmaster signals. You carefully pour a stream of the sacred summit snowmelt from a jade ewer into the bath near the emperor's feet. It swirls, dissolving instantly, a brief, localized chill, quickly absorbed by the overall warmth. Xuanzong doesn't open his eyes, but a faint, almost imperceptible smile touches his lips. Is it the physical sensation, or the knowledge of its celestial origin? Historians still debate whether Xuanzong truly believed in the snow's mystical properties, or simply enjoyed the world's most elaborate spa day. Later, cleaning the empty ewers, you overhear the bathmaster lecturing an apprentice. The order is crucial. Sacred summit first for grounding, then fluffy cumulus for lightness of spirit near the end. Never reverse them. The dowager once received blizzard strength, melt in her foot bath first, and complained of aggressive toe chi all week. The apprentice nods, wide-eyed, taking notes on a wax tablet as you leave the humid sanctuary, stepping back into the crisp palace air. The contrast is jarring. The cold bites your damp skin. You pass a storeroom where jars of reserve bath snow are being cataloged. One eunuch sighs, rubbing his temples. The consort now requests snow, melted only in moonlight for her rinse water. Logistics are challenging. The sheer, staggering effort sustaining this snowy indulgence hits you. The collectors, the clerks, the storers, the melters, the bathers. A mountain moved flake by flake for the sake of imperial skin. Walking back towards the barracks, the moon is high, a silver coin pressed against black velvet. Snow crunches underfoot. Somewhere, a night watchman calls the hour, his voice echoing in the frozen stillness. You think of the emperor floating in his jade-infused snowmelt, seeking purity, perhaps peace. You think of the scribe cursing Grauple. You think of the minor consort's trembling snowflake. The empire sleeps, wrapped in its snowy obsession, beautiful, absurd, and incredibly fragile. The cough rattles again in your chest. You pull your thin robe tighter, yearning for simple warmth. As the vast, silent machinery of snow grinds on, the imperial archives smell like trapped centuries. Dust, dried ink, and the faint, sweet rot of mulberry paper surrendering to time. Sunlight, filtered through high, narrow windows, cuts shafts through the gloom, illuminating dancing motes. You've been assigned here. Punishment or promotion? Hard to say. Your task: assist Scholar Wei, a man whose spine seems permanently curved from decades of stooping over scrolls, in contextualizing the snow collection edicts. Translation: find historical precedents to justify Xuanzong's hobby. Observe, Wei rasps, unfurling a brittle scroll with trembling fingers. Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty mandated ice harvesting for summer feasts. Pragmatic, refreshing. But snow? He sniffs disdainfully. Pure aesthetic indulgence. He points a bony finger at another document, a record from the Han dynasty. Here, a minor concubine washed her hair in melted snow once. Result, a severe chill and 3 weeks of sneezing, cited as cautionary. He pushes spectacles up his nose. His Majesty requires loftier precedents, divine connections, cosmic justifications. Find them. You sift through scrolls bound in faded silk, records of droughts, floods, locust plagues, tax reforms, border skirmishes, but precious little about snow beyond practical concerns for crops or travel. You find an account of a Tang astrologer interpreting a heavy snowfall as heavenly geese shedding feathers, a sign of celestial abundance. Scholar Wei seizes it. Yes, abundance, purity, weaving cosmic significance requires creative interpretation. He gives a dry chuckle that turns into a cough. History is clay, young scribe. We shape it to fit the vessel of the present. Hours blur. Dust coats your tongue. You uncover a bizarre tidbit. During a particularly harsh winter, 2 rains prior, a Taoist hermit presented the court with snow preserved in a vacuum-sealed bronze vessel, claiming it held the essence of winter stillness. The seal broke upon presentation, soaking the receiving minister. The hermit was politely escorted out, muttering about imperial impatience. Scholar Wei dismisses it. Failure. We need successful eccentricity. Historians still debate whether the Tang archives systematically purged records of failed imperial whims or simply documented the winners. A commotion echoes from the corridor. A junior clerk bursts in, eyes wide. Tax riots. Near the West Market, they overturned a grain cart. Scholar Wei barely looks up. Riots? Over what? The new levy on turnip seeds? The clerk pants. Snow jars. The household assessment quotas. They say it's impossible to meet without starving. Wei sighs. A sound like parchment tearing. Ah, the inevitable friction between celestial poetry and earthly hunger. He dips his brush. Note it. File under Administrative Challenges, subsection, Resource Allocation versus Royal Hobbies. The news hangs heavy in the dusty air. You remember the old conscript grumbling weeks ago. Outside these walls, the snow decree isn't a poetic fancy. It's an extra burden, another jar to fill while children go hungry. You picture the overturned cart, scattered grain like golden tears on the snow. Scholar Wei seems to read your thoughts. Empires, he murmurs, tracing a character, meaning balance, are intricate ice sculptures, beautiful, complex, perpetually on the verge of melting. He gestures at the towering shelves. We record the beauty. The melting is someone else's scroll. As dusk paints the archives in deep blues, Wei finally finds his precedent. A fragmented Song dynasty, pre-Tang text, mentioning a ruler who offered first snow at an ancestral shrine, seeking blessings. Divine connection, Wei declares triumphantly. His weariness momentarily lifted. We'll emphasize the piety, downplay the storage logistics. He begins drafting, his brush whispering across fresh paper, constructing a lineage of snowy reverence where perhaps none truly existed. You watch the dust motes dance in the dying light. History, it seems, is written not just with ink, but with selective memory and sheer bureaucratic will. The cough tickles your throat again, a persistent reminder of the cold world beyond the archive walls. Dawn breaks, not with sun, but with a dense, swirling fog that swallows Chang'an whole. The city becomes a ghost realm, sounds muffled, shapes blurred, the familiar transformed into eerie silhouettes. Today's assignment is a coveted, if peculiar, one. Accompany the Imperial Snowflake catching expedition to the frozen banks of the Wei River. It promises fresh air, a break from archives and barracks, and a front row seat to peak Tang Dynasty absurdity, a caravan of ornate palanquins, and sturdy supply carts departs the palace gates, winding through the fog-shrouded streets. Inside your assigned palanquin, the air is thick with the scent of ginger candies and nervous anticipation. Across from you sits Master Calligrapher Fu, tasked with sketching exemplary flakes on specially treated rice paper before they melt. He clutches his brushes like sacred relics. Speed and serenity, he mutters, practicing brush strokes in the air. Capture the essence before it evaporates. The riverbank, when you arrive, is a desolate expanse of cracked ice and wind-scoured snowdrifts. The fog hangs low, turning the world monochrome. Eunuchs swiftly erect silk pavilions, unfurl thick felt rugs, and set up braziers, glowing with fragrant applewood. Consort Yang arrives, bundled in ermine, looking like a sleepy, luxurious owl. Emperor Xuanzong follows, his expression unreadable, gazing into the swirling gray, as if expecting celestial calligraphy to appear. The catchers fan out, young, nimble-fingered apprentices clad in white, carrying large, shallow trays lined with dark silk. They move with practiced silence, eyes scanning the foggy air. Look for the slow dancers, instructs the chief catcher, a man whose eyes seem permanently strained from flake spotting. The symmetrical ones. Avoid the clumps. Peasant snow. You watch an apprentice freeze, tray held aloft, as a single, large flake drifts down. It lands on the dark silk, a perfect, intricate star. A collective intake of breath. Master Fu scurries forward, his brush a blur. Within seconds, he renders the flake's pattern with astonishing delicacy on the treated paper. The snowflake vanishes, but its image remains, a fragile, inked ghost. The chief catcher nods approval. For the flawless harmony folio, Consort Yang claps her mittened hands softly. So pretty, like frozen lace. An apprentice near the river's edge gasps. He points downwards, trapped within the clear ice. Beneath his feet are thousands of bubbles, frozen mid-ascent. Look, like tiny pearls, he exclaims. Scholar Wei, who insisted on coming for context, peers down. Air pockets, he declares, trapped during a rapid freeze, scientifically mundane. The chief catcher glares. Do not disturb the purity with mundanity. Focus on falling art. Lunch is served in the pavilions. Hot congee with slivers of dried fish, warming plum wine. You overhear courtiers debating the captured flakes. That hexagonal one had aggressive angles, murmurs one. Portends military action. Another scoffs. Nonsense. It signifies vigorous poetry. Xuanzong remains silent, sipping his wine, watching the catchers in the fog. He seems less interested in individual flakes than in the act itself, the pursuit of transient beauty. Historians still debate whether his snow obsession was a spiritual practice, an artistic affectation, or an escape from the crushing weight of governance. Watching him stare into the gray, you suspect it might be all three. Suddenly, a section of ice near the bank groans loudly, then collapses with a wet crunch. An apprentice yelps, scrambling back, his tray of precious flakes tumbling into the freezing water. The chief catcher groans. The serene contemplation, batch, lost. Master Fu sighs, closing his folio of saved sketches. Impermanence, he murmurs philosophically, the true essence of snow. The courtiers look mildly disappointed, then return to their congee. Only the emperor seems unfazed, his gaze still fixed on the swirling fog, where new flakes are beginning to emerge. The fog thickens as afternoon wanes. The expedition packs up, the mood subdued by the loss, but also strangely satisfied. the captured flakes, preserved only in Master Fu's exquisite drawings, and the catcher's memories are already gone. You ride back towards Chang'an, the palanquin rocking gently. The fog muffles the city's sounds, creating an eerie quiet. You think of the bubbles trapped in ice, the vanishing flakes, the Emperor's silent vigil. Everything feels suspended, fragile, waiting for the next snow, the next moment, the next shift in the unseen wind. The cough is a soft echo in your chest. Chang'an looms ahead, a darker smudge in the gray, its snowy burdens and warm hearths waiting. The expedition, like the snowflakes it sought, leaves only a trace of beauty and a lingering chill. The scent hits you first, ozone and cold stone. You stand in the Imperial Observatory, a tower piercing Chang'an's skyline like a frozen needle. Snow whispers against its thick, latticed windows. Astrologer-in-Chief Master Dung adjusts a bronze armillary sphere dusted with frost, his breath pluming in the frigid air. "Focus, apprentice," he barks, "though you're just here to deliver the weekly celestial alignment snow." Jars gathered from the observatory roof during meteor showers. Tonight, we chart the cryo constellations, stellar patterns said to govern snowfall density, vital for predicting optimal collection windows. Master Deng squints through a sighting tube aimed at a patch of leaden sky. The azure dragon's tail dips low, portends fine, dry flakes, ideal for archival purity. He scribbles furiously on a wax tablet. A junior astrologer sneezes violently, rattling a delicate star chart. Dung glares. "Control your earthly emanations. We measure heavenly emissions." You place the snow jars near a brazier, watching condensation bead on the cold clay. One jar, labeled Hour of the Dog, Meteor Trails Observed, already shows a faint waterline. History, even celestial history, melts. Deng lectures as snow drifts past the windows. Each flake, they say, is shaped by the star under which it forms. Sirius births sharp daggers. Vega yields delicate lace. He pauses, adjusting his fur-lined hat. Of course, scientifically, it's likely nonsense. Wind shear and temperature gradients are the true sculptors, but His Majesty prefers the poetry of the spheres. He gestures to a scroll titled Correlations Between Lunar Mansions and Snowflake Arm Structure. Preliminary findings. Historians still debate whether Tang astronomers genuinely sought snowflake star links or just humored a bored emperor with funded stargazing. A eunuch arrives, breathless. "Master Deng." The consort requests an immediate snow horoscope. She plans a moonlit snow viewing tonight and demands auspicious flake geometry. Dung sighs, rubbing his temples. "Tell her, Grace, the willow catkin pattern prevails tonight. Soft, gentle, aesthetically pleasing. Avoids the shattered jade type. Too angular, portends broken fingernails." The eunuch bows, relieved, and scurries away. "Aesthetics," Dung mutters. "The true celestial force in this palace." As dusk bleeds into the observatory, lamps are lit, casting long, dancing shadows. Dung points out actual constellations emerging between snow clouds. The Great Chariot, the Celestial Ford. It's breathtaking, this vast, indifferent sky. You feel impossibly small, a speck collecting other specks for an emperor's whim. Then Dung sneezes again, shattering the grandeur. "Blasted cold," he grumbles, reaching for a jar. Perhaps this snowmelt tea will soothe, purely for medicinal analysis, of course. Leaving the tower, snowflakes catch in your eyelashes. Chang'an spreads below, a tapestry of warm lantern glow and cold blue shadows. Somewhere, Consort Yang is admiring willow catkin flakes. Somewhere, a street vendor shivers. The sky's vast silence presses down, a reminder of how small, how human, this snowy obsession truly is. Warmth, sweet, fragrant, thick warmth. You've stumbled into the hall of perpetual spring, a botanical marvel hidden within the palace walls. Hippocausts pump heated air under marble floors, nurturing orchids, citrus trees, and plums coaxed into early blossom. The air hums with moisture, and the drone of bees trapped in eternal summer. It's here the emperor's prized snow crickets reside. Cricket Master Bo, a slight man with grass-stained knees, greets you. Ah, the snow deliverer. Just in time for the noon chorus. He leads you past steaming pools, lined with ferns, to rows of delicate jade and silver cages. Inside, crickets the size of your thumbnail bask under miniature heat lamps. His Majesty believes snow-cooled crickets sing sweeter, Bo explains, carefully placing a tiny dish of your delivered snow, labeled Garden of Whispering Pines, Dawn, Low Wind, into a cage. The resident cricket immediately hops onto the cool jade, its chirps shifting from shrill staccato to longer, more melodic trills. Hear the difference, Bo beams. Cryo-resonance. It's undeniably pleasant. The warm, humid air, the lazy buzz of bees, the surprisingly complex cricket song weaving through it all. We mimic their natural hibernation chill, Bo confides, misting an orchid with a silver sprayer. Stimulates their musical nostalgia. He shares the palace's weirdest secret. Consort Young once demanded a cricket be cooled with snow melted by moonlight. It refused to sing for a week. Lesson learned. Even crickets have limits to imperial whimsy. Your task is refreshing snow dishes. As you work, Bo points out champions. Li Bai, renowned for melancholic twilight solos, iron larynx, startling volume, and the philosopher pauses mid-chirp as if pondering existence. The emperor finds their song clarifying, Bo murmurs, a counterpoint to court intrigue. You recall the tense tax riot reports. Perhaps the cricket's simple cyclical music is a balm. Historians still debate whether Xuanzong's cricket hobby reflected a deep love of nature, or was just the 8th century equivalent of curated ambient noise playlists. Suddenly, a commotion erupts near the entrance. 2 junior officials, faces flushed from the outside cold, whisper urgently. Fragments reach you. Rebel scouts sighted near Luoyang. General An's troops restless. Grain shipments delayed. Master Bo tenses, his hand pausing over a cricket cage. The warm air feels suddenly heavy, cloying. Even the crickets seem to hush for a moment. One official notices you, silencing his companion with a sharp look. They bow stiffly to Bo and retreat back into the winter. The peaceful illusion of the hothouse shatters. Bo sighs, a long, slow exhalation that fogs the warm air. He gently taps the philosopher's cage. The cricket resumes its song, a hesitant, questioning chirp. Snow for crickets, Bo murmurs, watching the tiny dish already bead with meltwater. While outside, he doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. The juxtaposition is jarring. This bubble of forced spring, fragrant and fragile, sheltering delicate creatures, cooled by imperial snow, while the vast, frozen empire, beyond its walls, begins to creak and groan under pressures no cricket song can soothe. You finish replacing the snow, the cold clay jar, feeling alien in the tropical heat. The chirps resume, a sweet, oblivious counterpoint to the chill dread settling in your own bones. The air in the moon-viewing pavilion hangs colder than a banker's heart. Consort Young has decreed an intimate snowflake soiree. You, inexplicably promoted to aesthetic attendant, stand rigid near a brazier, holding a tray of snowflake-tasting vessels, absurdly tiny celadon spoons. The elite guests huddle in furs, breath misting, pretending not to shiver. Young, resplendent in robes woven with silver threads mimicking frost patterns, beams. Tonight, we savor heaven's artistry. Master Fu, the calligrapher, displays his riverbank sketches under lamplight. Observe the frozen lace, he intones, pointing to an intricate branching flake. Notes of delicate melancholy, a hint of distant temple bells. A portly minister sniffs the air near the drawing. I detect crispness, like the snap of a frozen twig. Yang claps. Precisely. Now, the shattered star? Fu points to a jagged design. Aggressive angles. Bold. Perhaps peppery. A duchess murmurs. Makes my sinuses tingle just looking at it. Historians still debate whether Tang aristocrats genuinely experienced synesthesia or were masters of competitive pretension. Your task? Serve snow essence. A eunuch pours minuscule amounts of meltwater from labeled jars into the spoons. This is Dawn's first sigh from the imperial plum grove, he whispers as you offer it to the portly minister. The man sips, swishes, swallows. Ah, a clean finish? Undertones of anticipation? You serve the midnight whisper, rooftop snow, to the Duchess. She frowns. Muddy, slight aftertaste of pigeon. You recall the scribe's meticulous bird overflight labels. Accuracy matters. Yang insists on live tasting. An apprentice catcher stands ready with a dark silk tray. A perfect willow catkin flake drifts down. Swift as a heron, the catcher presents it. Yang plucks it delicately with silver tweezers, places it on her tongue, and closes her eyes. The pavilion holds its breath. She sighs. So fleeting, like a sigh on a frosty morning. Notes of pure sky? Her ladies-in-waiting nod fervently, scribbling notes. You fight the urge to remind her it's frozen water vapor, possibly containing street dust. Suddenly, a commotion near the entrance. A messenger, snow-dusted and panting, whispers urgently to a stern-faced general. Fragments drift, and Lushan, troops massing near Fanyang, supply lines cut. The general's jaw tightens. He catches the emperor's eye across the pavilion. Xuanzong, watching Yang's performance with a faint, detached smile, gives an almost imperceptible nod. The general melts back into the shadows. The An Lushan rebellion isn't a distant rumor anymore. It's a cold draft under the door of the moon-viewing pavilion. The party continues, but the air has shifted. The forced gaiety feels thinner. When a flake lands on a nobleman's wine cup, he stares at it, transfixed, not with wonder, but with a sudden, chilling awareness of fragility. Like an empire, he murmurs, too low for anyone but you to hear, before flicking it away. Yang calls for snowball fortune-telling, compacting snow, and reading the cracks. The results are conspicuously vague. Unexpected journeys, hidden strengths revealed. No one mentions war. You serve the twilight's lament, melt water. It tastes like cold dread. Your persistent cough scratches at your throat. A rude reminder of the body's vulnerability in this world of curated frost. Smoke, not the comforting scent of hearths, but the acrid, throat-clutching tang of burning paper. You rush towards the scriptorium annex, heart pounding like a frantic drum. Flames, bright and hungry, lick from a high window, painting the falling snow an eerie orange. Scholars and clerks stumble out, coughing, clutching armfuls of scrolls, faces smudged with soot and despair. Scholar Wei stands apart, back straight as a ramrod, despite his years, watching the blaze. His spectacles reflect the dancing flames. He holds a single, charred fragment. The taxation records, he says, his voice eerily calm. Sections G through M, the snow levy assessments, the riot reports from the West Market, the grain requisition logs, gone. He doesn't sound surprised. He sounds resigned. Chaos reigns. Bucket brigades form, hauling slush from snow piles to fling uselessly at the flames. It's eating the wood, a clerk wails. Snow just steams. A eunuch supervisor screams about imperial property. Someone bumps into you, dropping an armful of scrolls into the slush at your feet. They unravel, ink bleeding instantly. Records of snowfall on the emperor's birthday, 3 years past. Lost to fire, water, and panic, you spot the junior scribe who struggled with the character for Graupel. He's frantically trying to pull a heavy chest from the smoke-filled doorway. The flake density comparisons, he gasps. 741 to 742. You grab the other handle. Together, you heave the chest onto the snow-covered path. It's scorching hot. Inside, scrolls are singed, but possibly salvageable. He slumps beside it, coughing, tears cutting tracks through the soot on his cheeks. Why save this? You ask, gesturing at the obscure snow data. It's history, he rasps. Someone should know how much snow fell on the east wing roof. The fire is contained, eventually, confined to one wing by stone walls and exhaustion. The cost, irreplaceable records, years of meticulous, often absurd, bureaucracy turned to ash and soggy pulp. Master Wei walks slowly through the sodden, smoldering wreckage of the annex. He picks up a half-burned ledger. See? He points to a barely legible entry. Snow tax deficit. Household of Chen. West Market. Penalty. 3 jars, plus 1 silk badge revoked. He lets the fragment fall. The weight of jars. The sting of revoked silk. This mattered to Chen. Now, he gestures at the ruin. Gone. Like a melted snowflake. Historians still debate whether this fire was accidental, overloaded braziers, common in winter, or the first deliberate spark of rebellion within the city itself. Later, in the soot-stained courtyard, workers pile the ruined scrolls for burial, a funeral pyre for paperwork. Wei stands watching, the fragment of Chen's penalty still clutched in his hand. The falling snow tries to blanket the charred beams and ash piles, a futile attempt at purity. History, Wei murmurs, not to you, but to the smoky air, is not just the edicts of emperors or the clash of armies. It is also the weight of 3 extra jars of snow on a cold morning, the sting of a badge taken away, the smell of burning paper on a winter's night. He tucks the fragment into his sleeve. Remember that when you write of this time. Remember Chen's jars. You walk back towards the barracks, the scent of smoke clinging to your clothes, a counterpoint to the clean cold. The snow falls steadily, indifferent to ledgers burned, taxes unpaid, rebellions brewing, or an emperor collecting its fleeting beauty in clay jars. The cough rasps deeper in your chest. The city feels different tonight, colder in a way that has little to do with the weather. The carefully constructed world of poetic snowflakes and celestial purity feels as fragile as the ash dissolving under the falling snow. A new sound weaves through Chang'an's frozen air, the scrape of shovels on stone, not the soft crunch of snow scoops, but a harsh, grating rhythm that sets your teeth on edge. The city walls, once merely imposing boundaries, are being transformed. Work crews swarm like ants on spilled honey, faces grim under fur hats, piling stones, reinforcing gates, packing earth and snow, always snow, into gaps. The air tastes of iron, frost, and unspoken fear. The Unlucian rebellion is no longer a whisper in moonlit pavilions. It's a cold fist closing around the throat of the Empire. You've been reassigned to the Western Arsenal, a cavernous hall smelling of old sweat, hot metal, and rancid oil. Your task: help inventory arrowheads destined to pierce rebel flesh. A sergeant with frostbitten ears barks orders. Count fast, double check. A missing crate means a dead comrade. He slaps a bundle of wicked barbed points onto your workbench. They gleam dully in the lamplight, cold and purposeful. Each one feels heavier than a jar of snow. You recall the meticulous flake density ledgers. This inventory lacks poetry, only brutal arithmetic. 500 barbed, 300 bodkin, 200 fire arrows. History, you realize, is counted differently when it flies on fletched shafts. Outside, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of earth being tamped down resonates through the frozen ground. You glimpse laborers packing snow mixed with mud into the base of the wall. Insulation, grunts the sergeant, seeing your look. Slows siege ladders, freezes attackers' feet. His Majesty's snow finally finds a practical use. His laugh is short, harsh, devoid of humor. Historians still debate whether using snow as a defensive material was ingenious adaptation or a desperate symptom of imperial decline. Lunch is a thin, barley gruel, eaten huddled near a forge. The blacksmiths, stripped to the waist, despite the cold, hammer sword blades. The rhythmic clang, a counterpoint to the scraping shovels. Sparks fly like angry fireflies. An old armorer, wiping sweat from his brow with a soot-blackened rag, mutters, "Used to make pretty things. Ornamental guards, inlaid hilts. Now, kill sticks. Plain and ugly." He nods towards a pile of finished blades. War simplifies aesthetics. You think of Master Fu's delicate snowflake sketches, Consort Yang's moonlit tastings. The palace's curated beauty feels galaxies away. A courier bursts in, breathless, handing the sergeant a scroll sealed with black wax, the color of urgency. The sergeant scans it, his face hardening. Luoyang has fallen. The word ripples through the arsenal like a cold shock. Hammers pause, mid-swing. The clang dies. For a moment, the only sound is the crackle of the forge and the distant, relentless scraping of shovels. Luoyang, the eastern capital, gone. The fist tightens. The sergeant crumples the scroll. Back to work. Faster. The clang resumes, louder, angrier. You pick up another arrowhead. It feels colder than the deepest palace snow cellar. Your cough scrapes your lungs, a raw echo in the sudden grim silence. The palace storerooms feel different now. Not just colder, but emptier. The once teeming shelves of meticulously labeled snow jars stand half bare. Rationing. The word hangs unspoken, but heavy in the chill air. Master Kuo, the taxonomy-obsessed clerk, moves slower, his spectacles perpetually fogged. "Priority shipments only," he murmurs, running a finger along a dusty, empty shelf where Sacred Summit, Hour of the Tiger, once resided. His Majesty's bath, the consort's hair rinse, the dowager's gout foot soak, the crickets. He sighs, the sound thin and brittle. The crickets get meltwater now. Ordinary meltwater. You help him relocate jars. Consolidating. Blizzard strength. From the armory forge cooling, gets shoved beside Zen Flurry, destined for the Emperor's meditative tea. Master Kuo winces. The chi contamination. Unthinkable in normal times, but times are not normal. A jar labeled First Snow, Year of the Wood Rat, Vintage Snow, is carefully uncorked. For the bathmaster, Kuo explains, his expertise is vital morale. Even austerity has its hierarchy. The absurdity hasn't vanished, merely twisted. A harried eunuch arrives demanding snow infused with protective energy for the consort's new charm bracelets. Kuo, without blinking, hands him a jar labeled Southwest Corner, Stable Roof, Post Midnight. Strong earthy yang energy, Kuo intones solemnly. Very grounding. The eunuch scurries off, satisfied. Kuo adjusts his spectacles. Stable roof, likely infused with protective horse spirit or manure. Semantics, a ghost of his old dry humor surfaces. Tinged with desperation, deep in the cellar, among the oldest reserves, you find Scholar Wei. He's not inspecting jars, but sitting on an upturned crate, staring at a single, unlabeled urn in the dim lamplight. His face looks carved from the same cold clay. Pre-snow decree, he says softly, not looking up. Holds tax grain samples from the Henan province, wherein Lucian now feasts. He taps the urn, the grain that could have fed the troops now guarding the walls, or bribed a wavering general. Instead, he gestures vaguely at the shelves of snow. We stored skywater. He stands abruptly, dusting off his robes. Come. The dowager requires a report. In her opulent, overheated chambers, smelling of sandalwood and camphor, Wei delivers the storeroom inventory with clipped precision. The dowager, swathed in sable, listens while a maid paints her fingernails with crushed pearl lacquer. She interrupts Wei's mention of reduced cricket rations. The crickets must sing. The Emperor finds solace in their song. Melt something else. Wei bows deeply. Of course, Your Grace. We shall prioritize the melodic chill. His voice is impeccably respectful, utterly empty. Historians still debate whether the Tang elite truly failed to grasp the scale of the disaster, or clung to ritual as the last raft in a rising flood, leaving the dowager's warmth, feels like stepping into a tomb. The corridors are darker now, fewer lamps lit, fewer servants scurrying. The scraping of shovels on the walls is louder, more insistent, a constant reminder of the world narrowing, hardening, freezing over. You pass the hall of whispering steam. Steam still curls from its vents, but faintly. The bathmaster looks harried. You see jars of ordinary river ice being hauled inside. The age of sacred snow is ending, flake by rationed flake, replaced by the harsh, practical chill of survival. Your cough echoes in the empty corridor, a small, persistent counterpoint to the Empire's labored breathing. The snow in the storerooms, once the purest ink of heaven, now feels like the frozen breath of history itself, held in fragile clay jars, waiting for the thaw that might never come. The silence is the first thing you notice, an unnatural, thick quiet settling over Chang'an, like fresh snow, muffling the usual clatter of carts, the cries of vendors, even the ever-present scraping of the shovels on the walls. It's the silence of held breath, of a city waiting for the axe to fall. You walk through near empty streets, past shuttered shops and houses where faces peer, pale and anxious, from behind oiled paper windows. The air bites, colder than ever, smelling of packed ice, wood smoke, and something else, the metallic tang of fear. Your destination is the Ministry of Rites, a place usually humming with ceremonial planning and obscure protocol debates. Today, it feels like a tomb. Scholar Wei stands amidst scattered scrolls and overturned inkstones, his usual composure frayed at the edges. He doesn't look up as you enter. Inventory the remaining state correspondence scrolls. He orders, his voice hoarse. Separate the essential from the expendable. His gesture encompasses the chaos. Burn the latter. You stare. Burn imperial documents. But Master Wei, history. He finally meets your gaze, his eyes bleak. History favors the survivors. Apprentice. Not the meticulously documented dead. He picks up a scroll. A detailed proposal for a grand festival of winter's purity, complete with ice sculptures and snowflake poetry contests, drafted mere months ago. He drops it onto a growing pile of parchment, destined for a large bronze brazier, already glowing ominously in the corner. Incinerate the fantasies, he murmurs. Preserve the grain reports, the troop movements, the names of loyal prefects, if any remain. Historians still debate whether this act constituted prudent triage or the deliberate erasure of the regime's decaying grandeur. The work is grim, methodical. You handle scrolls, proclaiming the emperor's divine mandate, edicts on snowflake aesthetics, tax assessments based on jar quotas, all feeding the flames. The heat feels obscene in the frigid room. Smoke stings your eyes, carrying the ghostly scent of mulberry paper and vanished optimism. You find Consort Yang's personal request for moon-melted snow for a new hair tonic and hesitate. Wei snatches it, his lips a thin line. Into the fire, he rasps. Vanity has cost enough. The parchment curls, blackens, vanishes, a tiny, insignificant spark in the face of the coming inferno. Outside, the eerie silence shatters. A distant rumble, felt more than heard, vibrates through the floorboards. Then another, siege engines, and Lushan's fist pounding the gates. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud replaces the scraping shovels. A monstrous heartbeat shaking the city. A junior clerk whimpers, dropping a sheaf of papers. Wei doesn't flinch. Faster, he commands, feeding another scroll to the flames. Remember Chen's jars. Remember the weight. Remember the sting. Remember the smell of burning paper. That is the smell of an empire. Downsizing. Chaos, when it comes, arrives not with a roar, but with a frantic, whispered urgency. Before dawn, you're jolted awake in the barracks, not by a boot, but by the low, panicked murmurs of soldiers packing kits with desperate speed. The western gate, compromised, fallback positions. The words are sharp, jagged things in the dark. A sergeant shoves a coarse sack into your hands. Carry this. Move. Now, you stumble into the pre-dawn gloom. The palace is a swarm of shadows. Eunuchs hauling lacquered chests. Concubines weeping silently as they're herded towards waiting palanquins. Officials clutching sealed documents to their chests like talismans. The air thrums with suppressed terror. The scent of sweat and lamp oil overwhelming the usual cedar and incense. The emperor is fleeing Chang'an. You're swept into the chaotic exodus, forming in the vast meridian courtyard. Imperial guards, faces hard beneath helmet rims, form ragged lines. Ox carts groan under the weight of treasures hastily loaded. Bolts of silk, golden vessels, jade ornaments. You see clerks desperately trying to load scroll-filled chests onto an already overflowing cart. One chest spills open. Comparative flake, density, east wing versus west wing rooftops, 741-742 AD. Scrolls tumble into the churned mud. No one stops to retrieve them. Master Kuo stands nearby. holding a single, small jar, Sacred Summit, Hour of the Tiger. He looks lost. An officer barks at him to abandon it. Kuo clutches it tighter, then slowly, deliberately, places it on the ground near the palace steps, a tiny, frozen monument to a vanishing obsession. Pushing through the throng, you pass the Hall of Perpetual Spring. The doors stand ajar. Inside, the humid warmth spills out, smelling incongruously of orchids and damp earth. Cricket Master Bo is flinging open jade and silver cages. Li Bai, Iron Larynx, the philosopher. They hop hesitantly onto the warm marble floor. Their confused chirps, a thin, bewildered chorus against the courtyard's din. Bo doesn't look back as he walks away, melting into the crowd. The crickets are free, blinking in the unfamiliar cold air of a collapsing world. Historians still debate whether this was an act of compassion or merely the abandonment of irrelevant luxuries. You're shoved towards a line of supply carts. Your sack, you discover, contains hardtack and dried lentils, the unpoetic fuel of survival. As the first gray light stains the eastern sky, the vast, disorganized convoy begins to lurch forward, leaving the vermilion walls of Chang'an behind. You glance back. High in the moon-viewing pavilion, a lone figure stands silhouetted against the paling sky, Emperor Xuanzong. He isn't looking at his fleeing court. He's gazing north, towards the source of the relentless thudding, his face unreadable in the distance. Is it resignation, calculation, or simply the hollow stare of a man watching his celestial inkwell shatter? Below him, forgotten on the pavilion railing, rests a single, perfect snowflake-shaped hairpin. Consort Yang's, perhaps, glinting faintly in the weak light before being obscured by the swirling snow kicked up by the departing carts. The vast, silent palace complex shrinks behind you, its halls echoing with a sudden, haunting quiet, its storerooms full of cold, forgotten purity, its courtyards littered with the abandoned relics of a dream made of snow. The road south is a river of misery, frozen solid. You shuffle forward, feet numb in thin boots, the coarse sack of lentils digging into your shoulder like a spiteful reminder of gravity. The imperial convoy is less a majestic procession now, more a staggering centipede of ox carts, palanquins, and trudging humanity, all painted in shades of mud and exhaustion. Snow still falls, but here, away from Chang'an's sheltered valleys, it's a needle-sharp wind-borne assault, scouring faces raw. The air smells of wet animal hide, unwashed fear, and the sour tang of despair. Gone are the silk pavilions, the heated palanquins for minor consorts. Nobles walk beside soldiers, their fine robes grimed, expressions shell-shocked. You see Consort Yang, bundled in a servant's coarse wool cloak, her legendary beauty obscured by grime and a profound trembling weariness. Her eyes, when they meet yours, briefly, hold no coquetry, only a hollowed-out terror. Beside her, Emperor Xuanzong moves like a sleepwalker, his gaze fixed on some point far beyond the rutted track, his once imperial robes indistinguishable from those of a minor functionary. The thudding of siege engines is replaced by the ceaseless crunch of thousands of feet on frozen earth, the lowing of exhausted oxen, the fretful cries of children, the new soundtrack of the Tang Dynasty. You find yourself walking beside Scholar Wei. He carries nothing but a small, oilcloth-wrapped bundle clutched to his chest. His spectacles are smudged. His scholar's stoop more pronounced. The weight of 3 jars, he murmurs. Not to you, but perhaps to the relentless wind. Chen's penalty. Remember? It felt so heavy then. He gives a dry, rattling cough that echoes your own. Now, he gestures vaguely at the vast, shuffling column, the skeletal trees clawing at a leaden sky, the distant peaks where rebel scouts might lurk. Now, the weight is different, stopping for a wretched rest in a frozen copse. You share a meager handful of lentils with Wei. He unwraps his bundle slightly, not scrolls, but a few charred fragments of mulberry paper, edges blackened, a corner of a tax record, the characters for Household of Chen still faintly visible. All that remains, he says, his voice barely audible above the wind, of Chen, of ledgers, of order. He doesn't look at the fragments, just holds them, feeling their brittle edges. Historians still debate whether Chen survived the fall of Chang'an, whether his revoked silk badge mattered in the end, or whether he vanished like smoke, another nameless casualty of an emperor's snowflakes. Wei tucks the fragments away, the gesture final, like closing a tomb. We carry the weight forward, he says, standing stiffly, until we can't. Night falls brutally cold. There are no barracks, no halls. You huddle with a dozen others behind a meager windbreak of carts, sharing body heat that feels dangerously insufficient. The stars are brutally bright, in different pinpricks in the vast black. Someone whispers a fragment of Levi's poetry about the moon. It sounds like a lament. Your cough tears at your chest, a raw, wet sound that draws sympathetic winces. You think of the warm, silent crickets left behind in the hall of perpetual spring, blinking in the cold freedom. You think of the snow jars, abandoned in dark storerooms, slowly weeping meltwater onto dusty floors. The weight Wei spoke of settles deep in your bones, the weight of flight, of failure, of a world unraveling one frozen step at a time. The mountains rise like broken teeth against the sky, the path winding treacherously upwards. The air thins, bitingly cold, each breath a conscious effort, scraping your lungs. The convoy stretches and frays, weaker oxen abandoned, palanquins left by the wayside when bearers collapse. The luxury of snow purity feels like a fever dream from another lifetime. Now, snow is just obstacle and danger, concealing crevasses, slicking rocks, stealing warmth with relentless efficiency. You're tasked with helping scout ahead for a campsite, climbing a scree slope with a grizzled soldier whose name you never learn. Halfway up, your foot slips on ice-glazed stone. You fall hard, jarring every bone, the world tilting sickeningly. As you struggle to rise, your hand brushes against something half buried in the scree. Not rock, but cold, familiar clay. You scrape away the wind-blown snow. A jar, unbroken. Its simple, unglazed surface bears no label, no poetic designation, just a humble storage jar, likely fallen from a supply cart days ago. Driven by a reflex you don't understand, you wrestle it free. It's surprisingly heavy. You pry off the wax-sealed lid. Inside, packed tight and miraculously preserved by the high-altitude cold, is snow. Not the curated, sacred summit or Zen flurry, just ordinary, wind-blown mountain snow. Pure white, untouched. You carry it back down to the makeshift camp, huddled in a shallow depression. People watch listlessly as you approach the small, struggling fire where Emperor Xuanzong sits, wrapped in rags, staring into the flames with vacant eyes. Consort Yang shivers nearby, her face gaunt. Wordlessly, you place the jar in the snow beside the fire. The simple act draws attention. The soldier who scouted with you grunts, melted, for water. A young page, fingers trembling with cold, uses a dented metal cup to scoop snow into a small pot suspended over the flames. The silence is profound, broken only by the crackle of fire and the moan of the wind. They watch the snow shrink, surrender, turn to liquid. No one speaks of celestial ink, harmonious chi, or poetic potential. The only poetry here is survival. The pot yields barely a cupful of water. The page, with instinctive deference, offers it first to the emperor. Xuanzong stares at the steaming cup, then at the melting snow in the jar, then out at the brutal, snow-clad peaks. A tremor runs through him. Not cold, something else. He takes the cup, his hands shaking. He doesn't sip it like a connoisseur. He drinks it down in quick, desperate gulps. The simple act of swallowing water, an anchor in the howling void. He hands the empty cup back. His eyes, when they lift, meet yours for a fleeting second. There's no gratitude, no imperial acknowledgement, just a raw, unguarded flicker of human relief, stark and undeniable. In that look, the vast, absurd edifice of the snow collection, the jars, the ledgers, the celestial theories, the bath rituals, collapses like a palace of ice in spring thaw. What remains is this: snow is water. Water is life. And life, in this frozen pass, is brutally, beautifully simple. Historians still debate the exact location of this moment, the name of the nameless scout, but they agree. It marked the final, silent dissolution of an emperor's snowflake dream. The page offers the next cupful to Consort Yang. She hesitates, looks at the jar, then drinks, closing her eyes as the warmth spreads. Around the fire, others watch, waiting their turn for the melted sky. The air in Chengdu feels thick as congee, left overnight, warm, damp, and smelling of mud, mildew, and the sweet rot of unfamiliar flowers. Gone is the knife-sharp cold of Chang'an, replaced by a clinging humidity that beads on your skin like anxious sweat. The makeshift court huddles in the sprawling, slightly dilapidated governor's residence, its halls echoing with the hollow sounds of displacement, murmured arguments, the clatter of hastily unpacked crates, the constant drip-drip of rain from overhanging eaves onto mossy flagstones. The grandeur feels borrowed, ill-fitting, like robes on a scarecrow. You're assigned to the scriptorium in exile, a humid room smelling of wet paper and crushed ginger roots burned to ward off insects. Scholar Wei sits hunched over a warped table, attempting to recreate vital records from memory and the few salvaged fragments. His spectacles slip constantly on his sweaty nose. The grain stores in Jianan Circuit, he mutters, dipping his brush. Approximate yield, based on rainfall reports from... He trails off, staring blankly at the fragment of Chen's tax penalty lying beside the inkstone. It seems impossibly small here, insignificant against the backdrop of total collapse. Precision, he sighs, is the first casualty of flight. We approximate. We guess. We invent. The task feels Sisyphean. You copy lists of loyal officials, names half-remembered, titles possibly invented. Wei insists on including a section titled Climatic Observations, Sichuan Basin. The Emperor, he explains wearily, inquired about the quality of local rainfall for tea brewing, compared to... He doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. The obsession, it seems, is a ghost haunting the humid halls. You dutifully note rainfall, persistent, texture, fine mist to heavy downpour, lacks the crystalline purity of northern snow, unsuitable for poetic contemplation, adequate for rice. Historians still debate whether Xuanzong ever read this report, or if the request was merely a nervous reflex, a phantom itch from a severed limb. Outside the scriptorium, the reality of exile bites. Former ministers queue for meager rice rations. Eunuchs barter stolen palace trinkets for medicinal herbs in the chaotic ghost market. A nightly bazaar springing up in the shadowed alleys, trading in rumor and desperation. You see a minor concubine, her silk robes now patched, selling a delicate snowflake-shaped hairpin, remarkably like the one abandoned on the pavilion railing. The buyer? A burly rebel deserter, grinning as he tucks it into his belt. A trophy from a toppled world. The transaction is silent, efficient, brutal. The poetry of purity, exchanged for the prose of survival. Rain drums relentlessly on the tiled roof. Your cough has deepened, settling wetly in your chest, a constant companion in the damp. You think of the dry, crystalline cold of Chang'an's storerooms, the jars silently weeping onto dusty floors. Here, everything sweats, rots, or molders. Even the memories feel waterlogged. Wei pushes the fragment of Chen's penalty towards you. Keep it, he rasps. A reminder that empires are built on the weight of 3 jars and crumble just as easily. You tuck the brittle paper into your own thin robe, feeling its rough edge against your skin. A tiny, stubborn shard of a frozen past in the overwhelming, wet present. News arrives like a fever, and Lushan is dead, not felled in glorious battle, but murdered by his own son in a squalid power struggle. The messenger, mud-spattered and hollow-eyed, delivers the report in the governor's main hall. A ripple goes through the assembled exiles. Not cheers, but a collective, shuddering exhalation, like air escaping a punctured wineskin. Relief, yes, but tinged with a profound, weary disgust. The monster who shattered the golden age, who drove them to this humid purgatory, ended by the very chaos he sowed. It feels less like victory, more like the punchline to a cosmic joke in poor taste. The mood shifts subtly. The constant, gnawing terror recedes, replaced by a frantic, almost manic energy. Return becomes the whispered mantra. Plans are drawn, debated, discarded, redrawn. Supply lines are scoured, routes assessed, loyal generals contacted via perilous, secret paths. The governor's residence buzzes with the sound of geopolitical triage. Which provinces are still holdable? Which officials are truly loyal? What treasures remain to fund the reclamation? The air crackles with the scent of hope, sharp and slightly acrid, like green wood burning. You are tasked with inventorying the remnants of the Imperial Library in exile, crates of water-damaged scrolls hauled over the mountains. Many are ruined, ink blurred into Rorschach blots by Chengdu's damp. You find sodden fragments of poetry anthologies, military treatises half-eaten by silverfish, and inevitably, snow records, a water-stained ledger detailing the harmonic resonance of flakes caught during different moon phases, a meticulous sketch of a stellar daggers type flake by Master Fu, its edges softened by mold. Holding it, you feel a pang, not for the lost obsession, but for the sheer, vanished effort. The armies of clerks and catchers now scattered, dead, or packing for the long road back. Historians still debate whether the sheer administrative weight of the snow bureaucracy weakened the Tang response to Wen Lushan, or if it was merely a symptom of a deeper, fatal complacency. One afternoon, carrying a crate of salvageable texts, you pass a small courtyard. Emperor Xuanzong, sits on a simple stone bench, watching the relentless Sichuan rain. He looks older, shrunken, his gaze fixed on the puddles forming on the flagstones. Beside him, uncharacteristically quiet, sits Consort Yang. She holds a single, wilted orchid, its purple petals bruised. There's no visible snowflake pin in her hair. The easy, performative beauty is gone, replaced by a stark, shared exhaustion. They don't speak. They just watch the rain erase the dusty footprints of a passing servant. The ambition to return, to reclaim the lost capital, feels vast, daunting. The reality of the journey ahead, the treacherous mountains, the scarred land, the fractured empire, hangs heavy in the humid air, thicker than the scent of ginger and decay. Your cough rasps, breaking the quiet. Neither looks up. They are lost in the gray downpour, perhaps seeing not rain, but the swirling snow of a Chang'an courtyard 1,000 jars ago. The path back north will be paved with more than hope. It will be paved with the cold, hard reckonings of a dream melted away. The road north unfolds like a scar across the land. Rain gives way to a biting, familiar chill as the Sichuan Basin recedes, replaced by the stark, skeletal forests of the Qinling Mountains. The air thins, sharpening, smelling of pine resin, damp earth churned by thousands of hooves and feet, and the lingering, acrid ghost of old fires. This isn't the hopeful exodus south. This is a somber procession of ghosts, returning to a plundered tomb. The weight of return presses down, heavier than the thin mountain air. You walk beside supply carts, hauling the meager sinews of restoration. Sacks of Sichuan rice, bundles of crude spears forged in Chengdu's damp workshops, chests of damp-spotted scrolls containing Wei's best guesses at governance. Gone are the treasures, the silks, the jade, survival, then salvage. The once mighty Imperial Guard is a ragged shadow, faces hardened by flight and the knowledge of what awaits. Consort Yang rides in a simple covered cart, her face perpetually turned towards the canvas wall, unseen. Emperor Xuanzong walks, often alone, his gaze fixed on the northern horizon, his expression a mask of stone, carved by grief and grim resolve. The only sound beyond the crunch of feet and wheels is the relentless, wet rasp of your own cough, a constant counterpoint to the silence. Nights are spent in the ruins of way stations, walls blackened by rebel torches, roofs gaping like open mouths to the indifferent stars. You huddle near fires, fueled by broken furniture and deadfall, sharing gritty millet porridge. One evening, Scholar Wei sits beside you, warming gnarled hands over the flames. He doesn't speak of ledgers or fragments. He points to the skeletal branches, clawing at the moonlit sky. The snow will be different here soon, he murmurs. Not the gentle flakes of Chang'an. Harder, icier, like the world has grown colder bones. He doesn't mention Chen's fragment. You feel its brittle presence tucked inside your robe, next to your skin. Historians still debate whether the climate actually shifted post-rebellion, or if the perception of a harsher world was born from shattered spirits. Scouts return with grim news. Villages stand empty, fields choked with weeds, shrines defiled. The poetry of the landscape is written in ash and abandonment. Near a ransacked temple, you find a shattered Celadon snow jar, half buried in frozen mud. Its elegant curves are cracked, its mouth choked with dirt. You pick it up, brushing off the filth. The character etched near the base is still visible. G, solitude. You remember filling similar jars in the Garden of Whispering Pines. Now, it's just broken pottery, fit only to hold rain. or be ground back into the indifferent earth. You leave it where it lies. The weight of return includes letting go. The first sight of Chang'an steals your breath, not with awe, but with a profound, hollow ache. The city emerges from the winter haze, not as a glittering capital, but as a broken jawbone against the gray sky. Sections of the once imperial walls lie tumbled like a child's discarded blocks. The soaring watchtowers are scorched skeletons. The air carries a new, pervasive scent beneath the old wood smoke and frost, charred timber, wet ash, and the faint, sickly sweet undertone of neglect and decay. Entering through a patched section of the western gate feels like walking into a violated tomb. The grand avenues are scarred by rutted mud and debris. Crumbling facades gape, revealing looted interiors. Vermilion paint, once a symbol of celestial power, peels in great, mournful strips. People move through the ruins. Survivors, stragglers, opportunistic scavengers, their faces etched with hardship, eyes wary and hollow. A gaunt woman sifts through rubble, with numb fingers searching for usable bricks. A child stares blankly from a doorway framed by fire-blackened wood. The Golden Age lies buried under layers of soot and sorrow. The palace complex is a heart-wrenching ruin. The Hall of Supreme Harmony stands roofless, its intricate beams exposed like ribs to the falling snow. Weeds already sprout between cracked marble slabs in courtyards, where eunuchs once glided with snow jars on padded trays. You walk past the moon-viewing pavilion. Its elegant railings are shattered. The snowflake hairpin is long gone. Only wind whistles through its empty frame, a lonely, tuneless echo. Historians still debate the exact sequence of the sack, but the evidence screams from every scorched wall and looted chamber. Beauty was no defense against rage. You're directed to what remains of the Imperial archives, a miraculously intact wing, its thick stone walls having withstood the worst. Inside, Scholar Way stands amidst chaotic piles of salvaged scrolls and fallen timbers. Dust motes dance in the weak light filtering through smoke-stained windows. He doesn't look up. His shoulders, always stooped, now seem crushed by an invisible weight. On a table before him lies a single object, a large, jagged shard of pottery, unmistakably from a colossal snow storage urn. Its inner surface is still stained with a faint, ghostly waterline. Found it near the storeroom cellars, Wei says, his voice a dry whisper. He traces the curve of the shard with a trembling, ink-stained finger. The dowager's gout snow, the consort's hair rinse, his majesty's bath. He gives a sound that might be a laugh or a sob, or just melted water. Gone. He picks up the shard, its weight substantial in his frail hands. He doesn't look at the salvaged scrolls waiting to be sorted, the work of rebuilding. He stares only at the pottery, at the stain left by vanished snow, the physical remnant of an emperor's vanished dream. The fragment of Chen's tax penalty in your robe feels suddenly heavy, a whisper of a different, smaller loss swallowed by this vast, silent ruin. Wei places the shard gently back on the table, a monument to futility. Outside, snow begins to fall on the broken city. Not the purest ink of heaven, just cold, indifferent flakes, settling on the ashes of an empire. The silence within the Qinglong Pavilion is thick as old felt. Not the vibrant quiet of contemplation, but the hollow stillness of retreat, of power relinquished. You stand in the antechamber, the scent of sandalwood incense failing to mask the underlying odor of damp plaster and medicinal herbs. Emperor Xuanzong, the retired emperor now, resides here, a gilded cage within the shattered palace complex. The snow falling outside the latticed window is just snow, no longer celestial ink, no longer collected, no longer weighed for virtue, just cold white flakes settling on the scarred city. You've been assigned as a lowly attendant, carrying firewood, replenishing inkstones, tasks devoid of poetry. Xuanzong sits by a brazier, wrapped in layers of quilts despite the modest warmth. His hands, once gesturing grandly toward snow-laden gardens, now tremble slightly as they turn the pages of a simple book of nature poems. His gaze, when it lifts from the page, often drifts towards the window, not seeing the falling snow, but perhaps seeing the garden of whispering pines, decades prior, filled with conscripts and open-mouthed jars. Consort Yang is gone, executed years ago on the flight south, a sacrifice to appease mutinous troops. Her absence hangs heavier than the quilts. One afternoon, as you place fresh charcoal in the brazier, he speaks, his voice a dry rustle, like autumn leaves scraped on stone. The snow. He pauses, eyes still fixed on the window where flakes drift past like forgotten thoughts. Does it fall softly or with sharpness? It's the first direct question he's asked you. It feels monumental, fragile. You glance outside. Softly, Your Majesty. Like goose down. The words feel inadequate. Clumsy, he nods slowly. A faint, almost imperceptible movement. Good. Soft is kinder. He turns a page in his book, his finger tracing a character, meaning tranquility. They used to say, each flake carried a message, from the stars or the moon. He gives a sound that might be a sigh or a scoff, lost in phlegm. Nonsense, of course, just frozen breath. Historians still debate whether this late clarity was wisdom, born of suffering, or the simple erosion of grandeur by time and grief. He looks at you, his eyes clouded, but momentarily sharp. You were there, in the garden, scooping. It's not a question. Yes, Your Majesty. Cold work. It's a statement, flat and final. He returns to his book. The moment passes, swallowed by the crackle of charcoal and the silent fall of snow beyond the window. Snow no one catches, no one labels, no one melts for tea. It's just weather now. The profound simplicity of the observation, cold work, feels like the epitaph of his entire obsession. You place another lump of charcoal onto the fire, the warmth a small, earthly defiance against the chill of memory and the cold white world outside. Chang'an heaves, not with the vibrant chaos of its golden age, but with the grudging, painful labor of rebirth. The scent of fresh-cut timber and wet lime mortar mixes uneasily with the persistent ghosts of charcoal and decay. Scaffolding claws at the scorched bones of palaces. Hammers ring. A new, pragmatic counterpoint to the mournful wind whistling through ruins. You walk streets, slowly being cleared of rubble. Past shops, cautiously reopening, their owners' faces etched with a wary hope. The empire is stitching itself back together. Thread by coarse thread, you find work as a scribe for the Reconstruction Bureau, housed in a drafty, repurposed granary. The task is mundane, inventorying salvaged bricks, recording lengths of usable timber, tallying sacks of grain arriving from loyal provinces. The poetry is gone, replaced by the stark arithmetic of survival. Ledgers speak of load-bearing capacities and grain-to-laborer ratios, not flake density or celestial harmony. Scholar Wei, impossibly old and frail now, oversees the archival salvage efforts nearby. He moves slowly, a ghost haunting the fragments of the past, occasionally pointing out a half-burned scroll fragment to be catalogued. He no longer carries Chen's penalty. You feel its brittle presence, folded small, tucked inside your worn sleeve, a relic of a smaller, colder world. One day, hauling a crate of salvaged roof tiles, you pass the site of the old Imperial Ice Gardens. It's a muddy field now, stripped of its frozen artistry, used to store quarried stone. Near the edge, half sunk in the churned earth, you see it, a small, unglazed clay jar, cracked but whole. Its mouth gapes open, filled not with snow, but with rainwater, and a few struggling blades of grass. No label, no character etched on its side, just a jar. You kneel, brushing cold mud from its surface. It feels familiar in your hands. The weight, the curve, the humble, practical shape. Not an emperor's vessel for heaven's ink, but a peasant's pot for storing grain, oil, or perhaps water. You take it, not for any purpose, not as a relic, simply because, back in your cramped quarters near the granary, you wash the mud away. The crack is clean, not leaking. You place it on the rough wooden table. It holds nothing but air, yet its presence feels solid, grounding. That evening, returning from the bureau, you find the jar holding a few wild winter berries you'd gathered, a tiny splash of defiant color against the gray wood. Historians still debate the precise moment the Tang Dynasty truly recovered. But for you, the turning point feels like this. Not a grand edict or a military victory, but the quiet act of finding a broken jar in the mud, cleaning it, and using it to hold something small, ordinary, and alive. Outside, snow falls on the rebuilding city. No one rushes to catch it. No ledgers record its texture. It simply falls, melts, nourishes the cold earth, and waits for spring. The weight in your sleeve, Chen's tiny fragment, feels lighter, not forgotten, but finally put to rest. The Empire's breath, once frozen in clay jars, now steams in the cold air of labor and slow, hard-won renewal. Your cough persists, a familiar rasp, but the jar on the table holds berries. It's a start. Spring arrives in Chang'an, like a hesitant guest, unsure of its welcome. The air still carries the bite of retreating winter, but beneath it, softness unfolds. The scent of damp earth thawing, the faint, green perfume of buds forcing their way through cracks and rubble. The city groans and creaks, not just with rebuilding, but with the hesitant pulse of ordinary life returning. You walk streets where new bamboo scaffolding weaves around blackened timbers, past market stalls selling fresh river fish and early greens. The sound is no longer just hammers, but the bartering chatter of vendors, the squabble of children playing in cleared lots, the distant chime of a temple bell, newly cast from melted down rebel arrowheads. History, it seems, recycles everything. Your work at the Reconstruction Bureau shifts. No longer just counting bricks, you now record witness testimonies, fragments of memory salvaged like pottery shards. An old potter describes hiding his kiln beneath a dung heap. A silk weaver recounts smuggling threads in hollowed-out cabbages. Their stories are not of emperors and snowflakes, but of stubborn survival, woven with dry, practical humor. Rebel officer demanded my best vase, chuckles one man. Gave him one painted with hidden insults. Hoped he'd drop it. Historians still debate whether such subtle resistance slowed the occupation or merely provided psychological comfort in dark times. You transcribe the humble jar holding your ink now, its crack a familiar companion. One afternoon, delivering scrolls, you pass the Qinglong Pavilion. The retired emperor sits on a covered veranda, a thin shawl around his shoulders. He watches two sparrows bicker over a twig in the skeletal remains of a plum tree. His attendant, a young monk with a serene face, reads aloud simple nature poems, not Liby's ecstatic odes, but verses about the patience of stones, the resilience of weeds. Xuanzong's gaze follows the sparrows, a faint, almost forgotten tenderness in his eyes. The monk catches your eye and nods slightly. No jars of snow here, just a bowl of plain water, a single early blossom floating on its surface. The simplicity feels like an unspoken apology to the world. Later, near the rebuilt West Market, you see a familiar stooped figure, Scholar Wei. He leans heavily on a stick, examining a stall selling salvaged goods, broken tiles, bent nails, fragments of blue and white porcelain. His hand hovers over a small, slightly warped inkstone. Imperial scriptorium, the vendor says proudly. Looted, but solid. Wei shakes his head, a ghost of his old dryness returning, warped, like the records it once held. He doesn't buy it. He turns, his eyes meeting yours. They hold immense weariness, but also a quiet clarity. The jar, he rasps, gesturing vaguely towards your satchel where your own salvaged vessel rests. Does it hold water? You nod. He manages a thin smile, the lines deepening around his eyes. Good. That's enough. He shuffles away, leaning on his stick, a figure dissolving into the bustling, hopeful crowd. A relic finding his final place amidst the rebuilding. The fragment of Chen's penalty in your sleeve feels paper thin, almost weightless. Its story, like Wei's, is nearing its end. The cough finds its rhythm, deeper, wetter, a constant rasp that vibrates in your chest like a poorly tuned lute string. The Reconstruction Bureau physician listens, taps, frowns. His diagnosis is blunt, mountain lung, earned on the flight south and the return north. Rest, warmth, good food. Avoid damp and strenuous poetry. The last is delivered with a wry twist, a nod to Chang'an's past absurdities. Your scribe duties are lightened. You are given the task of sorting salvaged garden plans for the restored palace grounds. It's peaceful work in a sunlit corner of the granary turned office, surrounded by faded drawings of peony beds and koi ponds. The plans are poignant relics. Here, the Garden of Whispering Pines, meticulously rendered with winding paths for snow contemplation. There, the moon viewing pavilion, positioned for optimal celestial alignment. Notes in elegant script specify plantings chosen for winter interest: snowberries, red-twigged dogwood, winter jasmine. No mention of snow jars. The poetry here is botanical, rooted in earth, not sky. You find a planned fragment labeled Emperor's Private Snow-Melting Alcove, proposed, showing a small, heated pavilion overlooking a frozen stream. It was never built. Historians still debate whether its abandonment signaled a shift in Xuanzong's interests or simply predated the funding collapse. You trace the delicate lines, a dream of warmth, watching cold dissolve, forever unrealized. One bright, cold morning, bundled in every scrap you own, you walk towards the reclaimed edge of the city. Your destination, a small plot of land granted by the Bureau, recompense for service during displacement. It's rocky, sloping, overlooking a bend in the Wei River, where ice still clutches the shaded banks. In your satchel, your cracked jar, a packet of saved winter wheat seeds, and a small trowel traded for a day's scribe rations. The work is slow, interrupted by coughing fits that leave you breathless. You clear weeds, turn the cold, reluctant soil. The jar, filled with river water, sits beside you. You plant the seeds, tucking them into the earth with numb fingers, not for grandeur, not for purity, but for the simple hope of bread. As you pat the last mound of earth, snow begins to fall, light, dry flakes catching the pale sunlight, not the heavy blizzards of rebellion winters, nor the curated flakes of imperial gardens. Just ordinary snow, falling on ordinary earth, holding the promise of water for seeds, not ink for poems. You sit back on your heels, looking at your jar, your tiny field, the river, the falling snow. The fragment of Chen's tax penalty slips from your sleeve, fluttering onto the damp earth beside the planted row. You leave it there. Let the rain dissolve the ink. Let the earth absorb the weight. Let the snow cover the memory of 3 jars owed. The cough rattles, but the sun feels warm on your face. The city rebuilds behind you. It sounds a distant murmur. Here, at the edge, with seeds in the ground and snow on your shoulders, the vast machinery of empire feels distant, replaced by the slow, cold, hopeful rhythm of the turning earth and your own labored breath. The snow falls, the river flows, the seeds sleep. You watch, a small figure in a vast landscape, finally home. Time in Chang'an becomes a slow river, widening as it nears the sea. Seasons turn. Your small plot yields scrubby wheat, then bitter greens, then stubborn turnips that push through the frost-hardened earth like clenched fists. The cough, your constant companion since the mountains, deepens its claim. It's a weather vane in your chest, flaring with damp autumn mists, rattling like dry seeds in the brittle cold, softening only slightly in the brief, humid, Sichuan-like warmth of high summer. You brew pungent teas of dried chrysanthemum and licorice root in your cracked jar, the steam offering fleeting solace. The city's reconstruction hums steadily now, less a frantic scramble, more the diligent mending of a well-worn cloak. New roofs gleam under the sun. Markets bustle with a confidence born of 2 peaceful harvests. Children's laughter echoes where only wind once moaned through ruins. The jar sits on your rough-hewn table, holding tea, seeds, sometimes a single wildflower, a vessel of simple purpose. News drifts in, softened by distance. Emperor Daizong, Xuanzong's grandson, reigns. He speaks of fiscal reforms, military streamlining, agricultural incentives. No edicts concerning snowflakes grace the public notice boards. The retired emperor finally passed in the Qinglong Pavilion, they say, watching sparrows. His final words, reported by the young monk, were simply, "The snow falls soft today." A quiet end to a life of celestial ink and earthly turmoil. Scholar Wei, you learn, succumbed to the lingering chill of exile one winter night, surrounded by fragments of scrolls he was trying to mend. His final notation, scribbled on a shard of pottery, reportedly read, "Chen's jars, paid in full, by history." Historians still debate whether Wei meant the literal debt was forgotten, or if the suffering of countless Chens constituted a grim, collective repayment for imperial folly. You picture Wei's thin smile when he asked if your jar held water. Yes, Master Wei, it holds. One crisp autumn morning, walking the path beside your plot, you see a figure carefully placing stones near the riverbank. It's the young monk from the Qinglong Pavilion. He's building a small cairn, simple and unadorned. For his late majesty? You ask. your voice roughened by the cough. The monk shakes his head, placing another smooth stone. For the snow, he says softly, his gaze on the flowing water. For the weight it carried, for the beauty it held, for the forgetting it needed. He places the final stone. It's just a small pile of river rocks. No inscription, no offerings. Just a marker for something vanished, yet profoundly felt. The wind carries the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. You cough, the sound swallowed by the vast sky. The cairn makes sense, in a way no imperial snow jar ever did. The monk nods to you, a silent understanding passing between you, two witnesses to the quiet dissolution of a grand, frozen dream. You walk back to your hut. The jar waits, holding the day's water. The weight feels manageable now, borne by the earth itself. The winter comes early this year, a thick, white hush, settling over Chang'an and your small plot by the river. Snow falls not in furious blizzards, nor in delicate imperial flakes, but in steady, silent sheets, blanketing the rebuilt city, your sleeping field, the monk's simple cairn by the water. Inside your hut, the fire in the small hearth cast flickering, warm shadows on the packed earth floor and the rough timber walls. The air smells of pine knots burning, dried herbs hanging from the rafters, and the comforting, earthy scent of your own quiet existence. The cough has settled into a deep, familiar rhythm within you, a sound as much a part of the hut's nighttime music as the crackle of the fire or the wind sighing at the door. It doesn't frighten you anymore. It's simply the sound of a body that has walked a long, cold road, finally nearing its rest. You sip warm broth from your jar, the crack of familiar line under your thumb, a testament to survival, not flaw. Outside, the world is reduced to the soft, endless whisper of snow meeting snow, a sound like a billion tiny feathers brushing against the silence of the turning earth. You think not of emperors or rebellions, but of the weight of a turnip pulled from cold soil, the sharp scent of licorice root steeping, the warmth of the sun on your face, the day you planted the wheat that now lies buried under the white blanket. You think of the monk's cairn by the river, slowly disappearing under the accumulation, becoming just another gentle contour in the snow-drifted landscape, a memory absorbed by the patient earth, the grand obsession with snow's purity, its celestial messages, its weight in ledgers and jars, feels like a story told by someone else, a half-remembered dream from a different lifetime. Here, now, snow is simply the world resting. It is the blanket over the seeds, waiting for spring, the quietus over the scars of the past, the gentle eraser of footsteps, leading towards an inevitable, peaceful blurring of all edges. The fire pops, sending a shower of orange sparks upwards, like tiny, fleeting stars. Your eyes grow heavy, the rhythmic rasp of your breath sinking with the sigh of the wind outside. The warmth of the hearth soaks into your bones, a deep, grounding comfort. The jar sits beside you on the low stool, empty now, catching the firelight in its crack, a humble vessel at rest after holding so much: snow, water, seeds, medicine, the quiet echoes of a tumultuous age. You feel no urge to fill it tonight. Let it rest. The snow falls. The river, somewhere beneath its icy mantle, flows unseen towards the sea. The fire whispers. The world outside your door, under its thick, white shroud, holds its breath. And you, finally, blessedly, feel the profound weight of the quiet settle over you like the softest, deepest snow, inviting you to drift, to let go, to become part of the endless, gentle, silent turning of the seasons, where even empires are just footprints slowly filling in, and rest is the deepest, most ancient truth of all. We've walked the snowy streets of Chang'an, felt the weight of clay jars, witnessed an empire's dream dissolve, flake by flake, and found quiet peace by a river under the patient stars. Wherever you are listening now, perhaps curled under soft blankets, streetlights or stars outside your window, rain or silence filling the air, know that your peaceful corner of the world is a treasure. This story ends as all things do, softly, gently, folded back into the quiet. If this journey soothed your mind or eased you towards sleep, consider liking or subscribing. Your support helps us weave more quiet tales. And before you drift completely, whisper to us in the comments, where in the world are you resting tonight? We picture you safe, warm, and wonderfully adrift. Thank you for listening. Let the silence hold you now. Sleep deeply, friend. The snow falls softly everywhere,